Welcome to the island of Menorca and to the 11th Trail Menorca Camí de Cavalls, the renowned trail running race. The race presentation was held at the lake resort with the organisers, local authorities and sponsors in attendance. This is a key event in the running calendar. The longest distance is a circumnavigation of the island that follows a 185-kilometre route along the historic Camí de Cavalls. A great family photo. In all the races of different distances, there is a very high level of participation. The most well-known of the athletes is the French runner Antoine Guillon, who has won the 185-kilometre race on 6 occasions. This year, he has a special incentive.
Cette année, je reviens pour la 7e fois. C'est une course que j'aime beaucoup et là cette année, ce que je compte faire, c'est profiter aussi avec les amis. Il y a Cédric Chavet, Christophe Le Sceau, avec qui je cours souvent. J'espère faire un bon bout de chemin avec les deux ou l'un d'eux et on verra, en tout cas profiter encore de l'île et de l'organisation.
Claire Banworth is another French athlete who will definitely be running the 185 kilometres of the Trail Menorca Camí de Cavalls. She has won the last 2 races and is the favourite this year.
J'adore déjà l'île qui est magnifique, j'adore cette course qui est très bien organisée, l'ambiance, l'atmosphère. Et c'est juste une course incroyable et tellement belle et c'est pour ça que je reviens chaque année. Jamais 203, donc oui, on va essayer.
Pau Capet has taken part several times before and is passionate about the island and the Trail Menorca. This year, he's participating in the 100-kilometre Menorca North Coast Trail.
Este año venimos a correr a 100 kilómetros, es la única distancia que me queda de todas las que se hacen, aún no he participado en ella, la hice después de pandemia en etapas, pero como carrera única oficial no la he hecho, así que nada, el de sábado a la 1 de la mañana empezamos con el frontal en cabeza y tirar para la Ciutadella para llegar a meta.
There is a great atmosphere in this well-known part of Ciutadella. It is the perfect place for a special weekend for Menorcan sport. It's the Trail Menorca Camí de Cavalls. Participants and the general public were able to purchase race merchandise from a special tent. Typical Menorcan sandals were available, of course. The Balearic Islands regional television station broadcast several live shows. The participants enjoyed themselves during the photo shoot and captured the moment for posterity. The countdown has begun and there isn't long to go. Toffel Castanier has just arrived from Menorca and is another of the favourites to win the island circumnavigation race. The SER Adventurous TV programme will once again be participating in the event to experience the phenomenal atmosphere in the city generated by all the runners. Friday morning and it's overcast for the traditional performance by Menorcan horses. They are the warm-up act for a particular group of runners starting the 185-kilometre race, those who can finish in under 40 hours. At 8:30 a.m. they started running. The forecast predicted wind and rain, an additional challenge for those committed to this epic adventure. The leading athletes were already heading towards the north coast of Menorca. We are now in the build-up to the start of the 185-kilometre race for the most outstanding runners, as well as the relay teams. Let's see how Antoine Guillon and Toffel Castanier get to Plaça d'Esborn in Ciutadella. Both are veterans and titans of international trail running.
La course commence dans une demi-heure. On est en route là pour Ciutadella et Pour moi, ce sera la 7e fois que je participe à la course. C'est une très jolie course, hein. Faire le tour de l'île, c'est un très bel objectif. Donc là, je suis dans l'équipe Globe Trailer avec mes deux amis Christophe Lesault, qui est là, et Cédric Chavet, au volant.
Hello, bonjour.
Bonjour. I el gestionar 185 quilòmetres. Hòstia, que crec que no ho he fet. L'evolució, cap vegada. L'estratègia no ho sé. Crec que me preocupa més com gestionen el vent o l'aigua si en fa, tot el vespre, que no els altres corredors que estem que són importants.
All the participants are showing signs of nerves before the start of this extraordinary and competitive journey around the island of Menorca. The race began at 2:30. The participants received a lot of love and support from the general public. The relay teams were given the responsibility of starting the race, and they set off at a breakneck speed. And the key runners did likewise. As promised, the northerly Tramontana wind did not let up. Here we can see the arrival of the first relay team at the El Pilar refreshment station. They quickly exchange the chip so they can continue. The clock doesn't stop, and once again they run over the mat to ensure that everything is registered correctly. It's a very quick pace. And here comes the race leader, Toffel Castagnier, who quickly gives instructions to his support team. He also asks for salts. They offer him a sandwich, which he immediately accepts. Brief and direct. There is no time to lose. The Spaniard knows that to beat Antoine Guillon, he must get ahead and take advantage. There is also another incentive. No one has ever won consecutively the North Coast, South Coast and circumnavigation races. So, Toffel will fight until the bitter end to achieve the triple. But Antoine Guillon and his friend, Cédric Chavet, will not make it easy for him. Behind him, other runners such as Juanjo La Rocha, Javier Pons, Miquel Enseñat and Joan Farras were trying to avoid wasting time. Their efforts would end up costing most of them dearly. The first two women arrive at the El Pilar refreshment station.
¿Cómo esteu?
In the women's race, Karina Gomez was gaining an advantage over Ana Cristina Constantin and Carmen Perez as well. Meanwhile, Claire Banworth ran her own race at a more prudent speed. She was 10 minutes off the pace in the first stage of the race. Once her rivals had completed 100 kilometres, they really started to suffer and had to retire. The north of Menorca, wild and spectacular in equal measure. Nightfall brought some showers, although less than expected. We can see the circumnavigation runners arriving at the port of Mahon. It has been raining, but that hasn't affected them at all. The whole port is theirs, peace and quiet. Pau Capet is also here in the port of Mahon. He's the favourite for the 100-kilometre Menorca North Coast Trail, a nighttime race. The race starts in the early hours of the morning at 1 o'clock and the Catalan is hoping to achieve a new record time. Meanwhile, the long-distance runners had already passed the halfway stage of the race and had reached the southern part of Menorca. As he passed each of the feeding stations in the early hours of the morning, Toffel Castañer was suffering in the darkness. It was incredible to be able to witness the moments when he was struggling to maintain self-control and when he was speaking with his team.
12 kilómetros nada más.
12 kilómetros.
Sí, cala golda, ¿no?
Vale, venga, va. Vamos.
Antoine Guillon and Cédric Chavet were unable to close the gap in the early hours of the morning and remained 13 minutes behind Toffel Castañer. He was on his way to setting a course record. First thing in the morning at the El Castell municipal football pitch, the 85-kilometre runners are preparing for the start of the race. The announcer began the race punctually at 6:30 in the morning. Ahead of all the participants, a diverse route along the southern coast of the island. The leader of the circumnavigation was already in Sonchoriguer and about to face the final stage of the race. Here, the headwind and the rocky terrain would make things even more difficult. After further extending his lead to 20 minutes, Toffel Castañer was beginning to feel like a winner. However, French runners were in hot pursuit. At 8 in the morning, while some runners were already facing the final stages, two other races were getting underway. Fornés waved off the participants of the 58-kilometre North Coast Short Trail. The fact that there are routes of different distances means that the runners can find a race that they feel comfortable with, or with regards to the longer races, they can decide to be ambitious. The 58-kilometre race starts in Fornés. The participants join the Camí de Cavalls to run through some idyllic areas in the north of the island. Another race to consider is the 44-kilometre South Coast Short Trail. The starting point is in Es Migjorn Gran. Concentration is etched into the faces of the runners before they head off. This says it all. They're about to put into practice everything that they have trained for. This race also started at 8 o'clock in the morning. Toffel Castañer would not take long to get back to Ciutadella. He completed the 185-kilometre circumnavigation of the island of Menorca in a record time of 18 hours and 19 minutes. Not bad for a veteran who is about to turn 51 and who continues to set daily new challenges for himself.
Al final, muy buenas sensaciones, una victoria que me ha encantado. Y lo de récord, pues mira, un plus más, sin pensarlo, pero muy contento. El viento sí, el viento ha sido todo el día o toda la carrera con viento, primero costa norte de cara o de lado, después costa sur, al principio casi no pegaba de atrás, pero los últimos 15 kilómetros, viniendo a Ciutadella era de cara totalmente. Pero bueno, eso son las circunstancias de nuestro tipo de carrera, ¿no? Eso de correr en la naturaleza. Y yo creo que levantarse cada día para entrenar es lo que me hace sentir vivo al final, ¿no? Y objetivos así importantes como 185 kilómetros, creo que es eso, lo que me mantiene vivo a pesar de mis casi 51 dentro de 4 días.
The Frenchmen Antoine Guillon and Cédric Chavet reached the finish line 22 minutes later. This race was the quickest ever, as these two also bettered their previous times.
J'ai participé 7 fois et cette année, oui, j'ai amélioré mon record de 1 minute. Je suis content, ouais. Mais je pense que ça, c'est grâce à mon ami Cédric parce que nous avons couru à deux tout le temps et à deux, nous allons plus vite.
Eh ben, en fait, je pense qu'on a aussi été aidé par les conditions météo, quoi. Il a fait relativement pas chaud. Ça nous a aussi aidé. Puis le fait d'être deux, on s'est passé des relais, comme dit Antoine. Ça aide bien, quoi.
Albert Martinez Pons arrived in 5th place. He was the best placed local runner and became the first Menorcan runner to record a time of under 20 hours. Once again, Claire Banworth won the women's race. So 3 out of 3 for the Alsatian runner. She beat the second place runner, Isabel Moleiro from Portugal, by more than 7 hours, and the third placed athlete, Peng Zhongyin from Taiwan, by more than 8.
Ça a été difficile, il y avait beaucoup de vent et je me rappelais pas que la fin était aussi difficile, mais je suis très contente de mon temps et de comment la course s'est déroulée et je me suis sentie plus en forme que l'année dernière.
2023 was a record-breaking year for the Trail Menorca Camí de Cavais. Pau Capell broke the 100-kilometre record when he arrived in Ciutadella with a time of 8 hours, 43 minutes and 2 seconds.
El día estaba complicado al principio, nos llovió bastante al inicio de carrera, mucho viento, y la he hecho en solitario toda, así que nada, sufriéndolo mucho, contando fitas, como he dicho, que para pasar el rato, y al final apretando, viendo que estaba el récord a tocar, y nada, nos lo hemos llevado por 5 minutos.
First place in the women's race went to Coloma Sureda, who clocked a time of 12 hours and 10 minutes. Last year, she won the 85-kilometre race. Sureda highlighted the difference in conditions between the two events.
És la primera vegada que ho feia a nit i pues, m'assustava una miqueta, la veritat, però m'ha anat molt bé i superbé. I el recorregut pues, és molt xulo i bastant de vent. El vent s'ha notat. Comparat amb l'any passat tanta de calor, pues, enguany vent. Però bé.
This time, the 85-kilometre South Coast Trail Menorca was won in record time by José Luis García Pujadas. And Ada La Pedra was victorious in the women's race. José Luis graphically explained how tough the last few kilometres were.
El recorregut ha estat molt guapo i el temps ha estat bo. El que passa és que el vent, a partir del faro, pegaven tot en contra i tenies que lluitar. Però si duies forces, pues, podies administrar. Si anaves frit, t'acostava molt.
More and more athletes crossed the finish line, and there were more winners too. Enrique Pons and Ainhoa Elizondo from Menorca claimed victory in the 58-kilometre North Coast Short Trail.
Hoy siento que no he competido, he corrido y ya está, he disfrutado.
Roger Camellas was the winner of the 44-kilometre South Coast Short Trail.
Camino muy bonito, la verdad. Me he caído y todo mirando alguna playa y muy bien.
This was a highly competitive event, especially in the women's race. A lot happened. The winner, Mireia Blasco, finished just 3 minutes ahead of Àngels Llobera, who lost her lead in the final stretch after a bad fall on the dangerous rocks of Cap d'Artruig.
He començat molt ràpida, jo també, però l'Àngels ha anat a tope, com un noi. I l'he perdut de vista, i llavors m'he perdut, m'han avançat la tercera, m'he vingut a baix, però bueno, llavors he dit, bueno, a tope per la meva segona posició. I al final, al quilòmetre 30, m'he notat bé, apretat i ja està.
M'he sentit molt bé fins a arribar a Cap d'Artruig, que hasta quan he caigut, i després ja he hagut de baixar el ritme considerablement. Pensava que m'hauria de retirar, però he dit no, has començat, ara acabes, i la veritat que l'he gaudida molt.
The southern section of the Camí de Cavais was still packed with runners heading towards Ciutadella. This island is a biosphere reserve, and all the athletes enjoyed the stunning landscape, at their own pace, of course. Almost 2,000 people participated in the Trail Menorca Camí de Cavais races. 250 were Menorcans and 1,600 people were from other places. it is clear that the event makes a real impression on those who take part. This is exemplified by the fact that half of this year's athletes had participated previously. The race has become increasingly sustainable and is sponsored by the Menorcan Foundation for Encouraging Tourism and the European Union Next Generation. The Balearic Islands Tourism Strategy Agency also collaborates. This race never lacked rhythm. The groups of drummers at the Calamore and Cap d'Atruch refreshment stations made this very clear. Thank you so much for encouraging our runners. Isma Marquez received the first ever diamond race bib after completing the circumnavigation for the 10th time. For him, this must have been the most memorable finish.
Ha sigut molt emotiu perquè l'objectiu d'aquest any era entrar a meta amb el meu germà, que està sortint d'un càncer. Hi ha hagut moments de cursa, 3 o 4 episodis de manca d'energia total. I no tirava, però bueno, una mica d'experiència, tirant d'experiència i regulant bé, doncs ho hem pogut treure endavant.
The Menorcan horses are iconic. Every year we see them at the start of the Trail Menorca Camí de Cavalls. Their colour, their beauty, and the way they rear up attract a lot of attention. The participants took photos and shot videos using their mobile phones. The 27-kilometre North Coast race had an afternoon start and the participants set off from Lavai car park. Damia Ramis was victorious in the men's race and Bel Calero in the women's race. There were races of different distances, but for everyone, the finish line was the culmination of their adventure. There we witnessed one emotional scene after another. The closing event was the presentation of the trophies in Ciutadella's Canal Salat. It was packed with people wanting to enjoy that great party finale. It is the volunteers who make the Menorca Camí de Cavalls trail possible, and the applause they received was very moving. Isma's gold and diamond race bib was also warmly approved by the general public. Once the 185-kilometre medalists were on the podium, a huge firecracker was let off. The shockwaves were felt by the public and athletes alike. Thank you for choosing the Trail Menorca Camí de Cavalls. We look forward to seeing you next year. Farewell.